Right, our next lesson, lesson 4, chapter 1, Making of America, still about the idea of slavery. And now we look at the consequences of slavery, the effects of slavery. So we know already that we've got our slaves down in the South. It's dominating how they work, their economic potential. It fits in with their religious beliefs and it enforces their political power. However, just because we have our Missouri Compromise, which we looked at last lesson, doesn't mean that everything's happily ever after. This is about tension. So we now have a consequence of the fact that slavery is growing. We've got more and more tension. So reasons why we've got more and more tension. One is the growing fear of slavery. There had been slave revolts, slave rebellions. They're always going to end in some sort of bloody conflict, some sort of violence. So that scared people. So the North says, look, they keep having these slave revolts, slave rebellions. That means we need to stop it. It means it doesn't work. They then say, look, other places, they've ended slavery. We need to do the same. That's the North saying that. The South are like, no, we're going to keep it. Because if we change, our life is over. Then you've got growing opposition to slavery, right? Abolish, end, abolitionists, people that supported the end of slavery. So we've got lots and lots of different types of abolitionists. So we've got the ones that say, do you know what? Morally, it's just wrong. We've got abolitionists who actually just think the South have too much power. Then we've got abolitionists who actually think, well, we need to free the slaves and then send them back to Africa because they weren't here in the first place. The only reason why slaves were ever brought over to America is because they were a bit of property. So actually free them and allow them to return. And we've got, again, as we know, the slave revolts. So we've got people supporting the idea of slaves fighting back. Then another reason why trouble is growing is the dependency on slavery. So if you live down in the South, it was your dream, and it sounds such a strange thing, that if you are a poor white Southerner, it is your dream to own a slave, because then you've made it. And then once you own one slave, you want to own 2, then 10, then 100. You want to be rich. You want to live in that incredibly fancy plantation house with the pillars, and it's so grand. And that just meant that their profit, their livelihood, just revolved around slavery. So you needed slaves to be successful. Which means you will carry on buying slaves. So you will have horrible things like slave auctions happening. If children are born into slavery, they will become a slave. And it's always good to see that this is a web. Remember, a spider builds a web and lots of things are caught in it. So the South is definitely caught in the web of slavery. So's the North. They can't take, necessarily the moral high ground, because the North need the cotton to be used in their factories. So they're profiting. The North, remember, lots of rich people are buying this land. They, again, are supporting slavery. Then our final reason for our conflict and growing conflict and consequence, obviously the growth of slavery, is all wrapped up again in this power, this politics. You've got presidents coming from the South that believe in slavery, that believe in making money, that believe the South needs to maintain its power. And Andrew Jackson will look at the South and look at who's living there, the indigenous American tribes, Indians, Native Americans, and he'll start to think, if we get them out, we can put slavery in. More on that in the next lesson.